War has a way of stripping words of their meaning. Victory, honor, justice. Out here on the rim, all that mattered was survival. My name is Elias Mercer, former logistics officer of the Terran Coalition Navy, current independent contractor, salvage runner, and on the day this story truly began, a very tired man standing on the scorched landing pad of Caro's station, with a rifle slung over one shoulder and blood drying on my knuckles. Caro's station had once been a neutral trade hub between 6 star systems. Now it was a gutted shell, half-melted alloy walls, emergency lights flickering like dying stars, the air thick with smoke and the metallic tang of plasma residue. Raiders had hit it hard, and the Coalition patrol had arrived just late enough to make everything worse. I'd been hired to extract a data core from the station's central vault. Simple job. In and out. Except simple never survives first contact with reality. The Vral Syndicate had beaten me to it. We fought in the corridors, close, brutal, personal. Vral weren't big, but they were fast and mean, all claws and snarling mandibles. By the time it was over, the vault was secure, the Syndicate was dead or fleeing, and I was bleeding through 2 layers of synthcloth. That was when the station's acting administrator found me. He was a Ketheri, tall and reed-thin, with iridescent skin that shimmered sickly under the emergency lights. His eyes flicked nervously toward the corridor behind him. "You have saved the station," he said, voice trembling. "But our treasury is empty. The Syndicate took everything." I already knew what was coming. Out here, debt didn't wait for convenient circumstances. "I don't work for free," I replied. My voice sounded harsher than I felt. "You hired me. You pay me." The Ketheri swallowed. Then he gestured toward a guarded doorway. "There is one thing of value we still possess." The doors slid open. She stood inside a containment field, tall, even for an alien, with smooth pale gold skin and elongated ears that tapered elegantly back along her skull. Her eyes were a deep, luminous violet, intelligent and furious all at once. She wore a restraint collar etched with glowing control runes, her wrists bound in grav cuffs. A slave. I felt my jaw tighten. "I don't trade in people," I said flatly. "She is not a person," the administrator said too quickly. "She is a war captive claimed lawfully under interstellar code. Her species practices." "Doesn't matter," I cut in. "I fought a war to end this kind of crap." The woman met my gaze then. No fear, no pleading, just cold, burning dignity. The administrator's voice dropped to a whisper. "Take her or take nothing." Silence stretched between us, heavy as vacuum. I thought about my ship, barely holding together. The fuel debt hanging over my head. The medical supplies I needed before my injuries turned septic. I thought about how far the nearest coalition port was. I hated myself for hesitating. Finally, I exhaled. "Fine. I'll take custody." But the collar comes off. The administrator hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. You may do as you wish." The field dropped. The collar deactivated with a soft chime. The woman straightened immediately, rubbing her wrists. She looked at me, studying, not like property, but like a general assessing terrain. "I am not yours," she said calmly, in flawless Terran standard. "I know," I replied. "You're free the moment we leave this station." Her eyes narrowed slightly. That was the first crack in her composure. Middle. The truth beneath chains. My ship, Wayfarer's Debt, was a patched-together freighter with more history than paint. As soon as we cleared Caro Station, I set a course for neutral space and turned to face my unexpected passenger. "I'm Elias," I said. "I don't know your name, and I won't ask if you don't want to tell me. You'll have food, a bed, and a ride wherever you want to go. She watched me carefully. You expect gratitude. No, I said honestly. Just honesty. She considered that, then inclined her head slightly. My name is HFY. The way she said it, formal, weighted, told me it mattered. Over the next few days, we settled into an uneasy routine. She explored the ship cautiously, clearly unfamiliar with human designs but adapting quickly. She didn't act like someone who'd been broken by slavery. No flinching. No obedience programming. If anything, she carried herself like someone used to command. That should have been my first real clue. I noticed other things too. The way she analyzed star charts with a glance. How she corrected my translations of alien trade glyphs, languages I'd spent years learning. How she never asked permission, but always showed respect. One night, while I was rewrapping my ribs, she watched me from the doorway. You were a soldier, she said. Yeah, a long time ago. You still carry yourself as one. So, do you? I shot back. She smiled faintly. I was not always in chains. I didn't push. Instead, I did what I'd promised. At the edge of neutral space, I powered down the ship and handed her a credit chip, enough for passage anywhere in the sector. We're here, I said. You're free. She stared at the chip, then at me. You would release a valuable asset without compensation? You were never an asset, I replied. Just someone who needed help. Silence stretched again. Then the universe exploded. Alarm screamed. The ship rocked violently as energy beams raked our hull. Unidentified warship. This is the Imperial vessel Dawn of Kareth. A voice boomed over comms. Power down and prepare to be boarded. My blood ran cold. That wasn't just any ship. That was a royal war cruiser. Osherin went utterly still. Slowly, she turned toward me. Elias Mercer, she said softly, there is something you must understand. The boarding clamps hit. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hull. She straightened, her posture shifting. No longer wary, no longer cautious. Regal. I am Princess HFY, third heir to the solar throne of the Veilty Dominion. The air left my lungs. Before I could respond, the hatch blew open, and a squad of armored warriors stormed in, weapons raised. They froze when they saw her. Every single one of them dropped to one knee. My princess, their commander said, voice trembling. We have searched for you across 12 systems. Osherin looked at me one last time before turning to them. Stand, she commanded, and hear this. She gestured toward me. This human freed me when he had every right, by your laws, to claim me. He showed mercy where none was owed. The commander swallowed. What are your orders? She didn't hesitate. He is under my protection. The cost of mercy, I expected gratitude. I did not expect politics. The Veilty Dominion was ancient, older than humanity's first colonies. Their caste system was rigid, their traditions brutal. Royal succession was secured through strength, cunning, and, apparently, survival. Osherin had been captured during a border conflict and sold quietly to avoid scandal. Her disappearance had destabilized the entire region. Now she was back, and I was inconvenient. Back on the cruiser, I was treated less like a guest and more like an anomaly. Some officers regarded me with suspicion, others with thinly veiled hostility. A few, especially the lower ranks, looked at me with something like awe. Osherin insisted I remain at her side. You do not trust your own people? I asked her once, quietly. She met my gaze. Power fears example. You are dangerous. That worried me more than any threat. When we reached Veilty space, the truth became clear. Her return reignited succession disputes. Rival houses whispered that she had been weakened by captivity. Others claimed she was compromised by human influence. One faction demanded reparations. I was summoned before the Imperial Conclave. They called it a trial. It was anything but. They accused me of theft, espionage, cultural contamination. They demanded I be punished or returned as property to balance the scales. I stood alone in that vast chamber, surrounded by beings who saw me as a tool or a threat. Asherin rose from her throne.
"No," she said.
One word. Absolute. "This human reminds us who we claim to be," she continued. "We speak of honor while trading lives. He freed me without knowing my worth. That is not weakness. That is strength." Murmurs rippled through the hall.
She turned to me.
"Elias Mercer, humanity stands young among the stars. But you have shown us something old, something we forgot." Then she did something that changed everything. She knelt, a princess, a royal heir, before a human. "I offer you a bond of equals," she said. "Stand with me. Help me end this system." The hall erupted. I didn't hesitate. I offered my hand. "I don't bow," I said, "but I'll stand with you." Ending humanity's quiet revolution, the war that followed wasn't fought with fleets. It was fought with examples. Asherin dismantled the slave markets by exposing them, using my testimony, my recordings, my scars. She reformed the succession laws, leveraging public outrage and military loyalty. Other systems watched. Other species listened. Humanity, once dismissed as reckless, emotional, insignificant, became known for something else.
Mercy.
Trade agreements shifted. Alliances realigned. Former slaves found asylum in Terran space. Mixed crews became common. Old empires adapted or broke. As for me, I declined titles, declined land, declined power. I took a new ship, properly funded this time. Asherin and I parted as equals, friends bound by choice, not chains. Before I left, she smiled at me. "You changed the course of my empire." I shook my head.
"Nah.
I just did what felt right." She laughed softly. "Perhaps that is humanity's greatest weapon." I watched Veilty space fade into the stars and set a course for the unknown. Because sometimes the most human thing you can do is refuse to own another soul. And the galaxy will never forget that. The galaxy did not change all at once. It never does. But it shifted. At first, it was subtle. Small policy revisions buried in legal archives, trade clauses quietly rewritten, temporary labor practices reclassified under harsher language. The Veilty Dominion announced the suspension of indentured sovereign practices, a deliberately vague title that masked the truth. Royal decree had outlawed slavery within their core systems. Border worlds resisted. Merchant guilds protested. Old houses raged. And then Princess, now High Regent, Asherin Valeth, made the reforms public. She didn't do it from a throne. She did it standing beside me. Holocams captured the moment. A Veilty royal and a human spacer, scarred and unremarkable, shoulder to shoulder. "This man," she said to the galaxy, "was offered power and took responsibility instead." He reminds us that civilization is not measured by how many kneel, but by who is allowed to stand. The backlash was immediate. So was the support. Worlds once silent began speaking. Species long exploited found a voice they didn't know they had. Human diplomats, used to being ignored or patronized, were suddenly requested as mediators. Not because humanity was stronger, but because we were uncomfortable with chains. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The Veilty succession crisis reached its breaking point 6 months later. A rival house attempted a coup, backed by 3 mercantile fleets and an army that still believed slavery was necessary for order. They expected civil war. What they got was refusal. Ships defected mid-jump. Soldiers laid down arms. Former servants locked palace gates from the inside. When the coup failed, Asherin could have ordered executions. Instead, she ordered trials. Public ones. That single choice ended the conflict faster than any bombardment could have. History remembers moments like that. I left Veilty space quietly. No ceremonies. No escorts. Just a refueled ship and a clean ledger for the first time in years. The Wayfarer's debt was decommissioned and honored in Veilty records, not as a royal vessel, but as a liberation asset. I hated the name, but I understood the intent. My new ship was smaller, faster, unremarkable, exactly how I liked it. I ran relief routes after that. Border evacuations, medical supply drops, sometimes extraction jobs, but never ones that involved ownership contracts. Word spread fast. People learned what I would and wouldn't do. Funny thing was, it never hurt my business. If anything, I was busier than ever. One night, drifting between systems, I received a secure transmission. No official seals. No titles. Just Asherin. She looked different, older, sharper, but lighter somehow. The final edict passed today, she said. The last legal slave market in Veilty territory has been dismantled. I let out a slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. You did it, I said. We did, she corrected gently. Your example gave me leverage no army could. Silence followed, comfortable, familiar. You know, I said, you could have kept me. Used my story. Made me a symbol. She smiled. Symbols must be free, or they mean nothing. Before the transmission ended, she added one last thing. Elias, if humanity ever needs a throne to stand beside, you will have one. The channel closed. I stared at the stars for a long time after that. Years later, historians would argue over what changed the galaxy. Some would cite treaties. Others would point to economic shifts. A few would mention the Veilty Reformation. But among spacers, among freed workers, among those who'd once worn collars or watched loved ones disappear into cargo holds, a simpler story spread. A human was offered a slave as payment. He refused to see her as property. And by doing so, he reminded the galaxy that strength isn't taking what you can. It's choosing what you won't. And that's how humanity earned something no empire could ever seize. A reputation. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as a species that, when handed chains,